Jones and I'm Pro Bono Manager at global law firm Overy.
And the year 1978 was quite a year for innovation. The first IVF baby, Louise Brown, was born on the 25th of July. The first cellular mobile phone was invented, and the most innovative casting of teenagers on film ever took place. That's right, the film Grease was released, featuring the freshest-faced 45-year-olds going to the prom that you've ever seen. Tell me more, you say? Well, 1978 was also the year in which Gifford and Elizabeth Pinchot coined the term intrapreneur to describe an individual or team acting with an entrepreneurial spirit to serve the best interests of a larger organisation. The term has recently become a business buzzword, and our objective with our time today is to share some thinking about social entrepreneurship. How might this change the way we work to get more of our great ideas, particularly those supporting access to justice, adopted by the organisations that we work within and with? But before I introduce you to our illustrious panellists, I would like to ask you all a couple of questions. So, first of all, I'll ask you to applaud, to clap. Have you ever had a great idea for improving a process in your organisation? Please applaud. Okay, now, have you ever actually found it difficult to get the necessary resources or support to actually improve the process? Please boo. Okay, it sounds like we've got quite a lot to work with. So I'll introduce you now to our panellists. To my left, we have Emanuel de Lutzel, who's Vice President of Social Finance at BNP Paribas, which is one of the largest banks in the world with more than 30 million customers and a presence in 75 countries. Emanuel is also the author of the book on social entrepreneurship called Transformez votre entreprise de l'intérieur. It's available in French, so after this, please take up some classes and then you'll all be able to read it if you can't already. Next, we have Raphaela Toncic-Sorinj of Ashoka, Austria. For over 30 years, Ashoka has been the leading worldwide organisation in supporting social entrepreneurship, and Raphaela runs their visionary program. You would have heard Vivek Maru on Wednesday speaking. He was also an Ashoka Fellow previously. It's a great program. And finally, we have Saralyn Cohen, Pro Bono Counsel and Director of Pro Bono at Shearman and Sterling in New York. Saralyn oversees a pro bono program which, in 2016, saw lawyers and staff devoting approximately 52,500 hours to pro bono matters, ranging from assisting low-income veterans and development work for entrepreneurs across the globe. Okay, so we've got a great panel here, and without further ado, I would like to ask one of our experts on social entrepreneurship, Emanuel. How did you start being a social entrepreneur at BNP Paribas? Can you give us some more background about this concept?
Well, actually, it's not a concept, it's the reality, and I didn't imagine that sometimes I would be called an entrepreneur. I did something, I had an idea actually to change the world. I implemented the idea, I was lucky, well, I had run into obstacles and so on, but I was lucky that I could transform a little the organization. So my story in 2 minutes. So I'm a classical banker, nobody is perfect. Especially in the field of financing companies, so project financing and so on. I've been doing that for almost 30 years now. I joined BNP Paribas about 20 years ago, so it was BNP at that time. And I started to become interested in microfinance. That was in 2004. And to discover that microfinance has really a fantastic power to generate wealth and to change the world, because the people who become entrepreneurs, they have the capacity really to, in their environment, especially in emerging countries, they have really a capacity to generate wealth. At that time, microfinance was almost unknown. And I started actually as a volunteer. I started with a French microfinance organization called ADI. I started also to recruit some colleagues within BNP Paribas to be a small group of volunteers. So It was at the beginning something totally informal. Now we are about 600 people involved in volunteering within BNP Paribas and working for 40 different organizations. And that's not pro bono. It means it is giving time, but it's not from the company time. It's really from the time of the employees. Besides that, so I realized that actually microfinance could become a subject also for the company, for the business subject. And in 2015, I started actually to lobby internally, to tell to colleagues, quite often at much higher level than mine, so there is something to be done to finance microfinance organizations within the world. Microfinance is present in 100 countries. We are present in 80 countries. There may be something like 20 countries where we could do something to finance those microfinance organizations and then have an impact on economic development. The idea was totally disruptive. We knew about microfinance in France. We didn't know about microfinance in the rest of the world, with the exception of 2 countries, Morocco and Guinea. I spoke initially to my former boss, and he said, oh, it's a fantastic idea. Yes, the top management will support you, but before that, you should meet this and this person. And actually, this happened 40 times. 40 times, I met people I didn't know, told them there is something to do for the bank, and those people who were at 3 or 4 levels higher than my level, they say, oh, the top management should decide. After 4 months, I had 40 friends, supportive, but nobody had taken any decision. And then I decided, okay, before leaving the bank and creating my own fund, my own bank, my company or whatever, I want really to try and to go to the top of the top management. I spoke to the number 2 of the bank. I knew that I had 10 minutes to convince. And after 9 minutes, I told him, what do you think? Well, it's a very good idea, actually. We should do that. I will support you. Next month, you present the case to the executive committee. So I was level -6 to the executive committee. So when I presented the case to the executive committee, I knew I had 10 minutes again. So after 9 minutes, do you have questions? And I was overwhelmed with questions. Why? Because actually, well, bankers also have a heart. So they know about figures, business models, risks, and so on. But sometimes when you speak about purpose, when you speak about impact for the world and so on, they can be moved by that. And that's why many of them supported the case, because they say, okay, we are talking about 50 million lending, and not philanthropy, 50 million lending. Compared to the size of the bank, it's small. And if we do properly our job as bankers, the risk is limited, and the impact is huge. So that was the beginning of the beginning. Six years later, so after launching the microfinance department, I came with a new idea, this time concerning social business, so it's broader than microfinance. And now we have about 1 billion euros in microfinance and social business, about 2/3 in social business and 1/3 in microfinance. I didn't expect, actually, 10 years ago when I started, that I would tell my story in front of audiences like yours. But I think this case actually is interesting because it's not the only case, and in my book I present 20 other cases in 20 other companies. Anybody can become an entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur. Even if the environment is against you, but it's quite important, but there are some rules, and I will explain the rules later.
I think I have a microphone.
So, thank you very much, Emanuel. And now I'd like to ask Raphaela.
You and your organisation, Ashoka, you teach programs about how to solve societal problems in an entrepreneurial way. Could you give us some information about some strategies that you teach for success in terms of social entrepreneurship as part of your programs?
Thank you for the question. Maybe just a few words about Ashoka. For those of you who might not know, Ashoka is a global organization that supports social entrepreneurs in scaling their solutions. So one of these Ashoka fellows, we call them, is Vivek Maru, but also Mohamed Yunus, the founder of the Grameen Bank and the microcredit movement. So we look for social entrepreneurs worldwide and run them through a due diligence process, and at the end of this due diligence they become social Ashoka fellows. And as Ashoka fellows, we support them financially, so we fundraise for a stipend, but we also look at their organization and see how we can connect them with pro bono partners, other partners who might be detrimental in scaling their solutions. And that's what we're really passionate about. We want to change the world with the help of these social entrepreneurs. So, and what we did now is also, there is the what, yeah, and there's also a how. And since Ashoka has now experienced for over 40 years in supporting social entrepreneurs, we wanted to make this knowledge accessible to other people as well, to other groups of people from the public sector, the private sector, lawyers, whoever, business angels, business consultants, and because we see that there is a certain knowledge attached to becoming a successful social entrepreneur. And it does not really matter if you are, in our eyes, if you are an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur. But the difference is in working with intrapreneurs is that you work with the private sector. And there is an interesting interface between social entrepreneurship and the public sector and also large corporates. And this is how we think about working with corporates and developing a meaningful CSR strategy along the lines of their value chain. And I just give you an example. For example, a Spanish Ashoka fellow, Ana Bella Esteves, she she's the victim of domestic violence, and at a certain point, she had 4 children. She left her husband and went into these refugee camps or refuges. And then after, I think, 6 months, usually you have to leave this camp, and you are given a piece of paper saying you are a victim of domestic violence, and as a victim, you are entitled to receive 300 euros. And she looked at this piece of paper and she said, well, I am not a victim, I'm a survivor. And as a survivor, I have certain competencies that nobody else has. And she started a foundation, the Ana Bella Esteves Foundation, where in the meanwhile she helped over 20,000 women worldwide. And how did she do that? It was in that case with the help of Ashoka, because we developed a business model around her idea, her mind shift change, and through working together with large corporations like Danone, Renault, others, that employ these women who actually leave their disadvantageous situation. And there I can also see an interface with the legal pro bono community, because we have many such entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, who are actually co-creating and collaborating with the private sector, and at the same time they change national legislation. And for this work, they would really need the support of the legal community, maybe much more than we do it now, and I'm really happy to be able to sit on this panel and to share these thoughts with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, Saralyn, I'd like to ask, have you ever thought of yourself as a social entrepreneur within your law firm? I mean, on Monday, Atanas Politov, that many people will know here, spoke of his role as a pro bono coordinator as secretly running an NGO inside a law firm. Is that how you think about things?
I think our mics work, so we don't have to keep passing it unless that's not good for you. Atanas. He's so sneaky. He's being secretly working in his firm. I do see what you're saying about that, Atanas. I think what's important to me as pro bono counsel, and a member of my wonderful team is here with me, Nina, the pro bono manager for Europe, is in the audience. I think we feel like first we need to know, really get to know our firm and our employer, and Hayley, I'm sure you feel that way too. As far as not really what we can get away with, but there are some things that I think would automatically be a no for lots of us. I know when I first arrived, I was not a junior lawyer at my present firm. I was at another firm doing reinsurance law, which was so fascinating. And then I came on to Shearman in the pro bono counsel role and really needed to get to know what they would say yes to. So for example, obviously around the world, there's a big issue with consumer debt. In the US, foreclosure on homes and other places. Well, that's automatically, people would say no to that in our firm because we represent many banks. So when they said, okay, we can't do anything in that space, or they would say, well, I am a project development lawyer. I don't know how to help a low-income woman, domestic violence survivor. I would try to go back to my office and regroup and then go back to them and say, you are a transactional lawyer. You're very organized and detail-oriented. We do have some transactional pro bono for you, but you can learn to help the domestic violence survivor because we will put tools in place within the firm to support you. And we have precedent and everything that you usually like, training, people to ask questions of, so that you can say yes to that. If we can't do the consumer debt, are we happy with, in the US, many firms won't represent low-income employees who are facing discrimination at work. We don't have a large litigation practice representing corporations when employees sue them, so we have told NGOs we can work in that space. So if one firm won't do that, maybe we can do that. And so I think even within the law firm community as well, we are good friends and collaborators, plenty of pro bono to go around, and we work together to say, well, Hayley, we can't do the bank work. Would your firm do the bank work? I mean, the bank work is hard for all of us, but we can kind of talk and build not only within our firm to get our firm to say yes, but to work within the law firm community to say, well, who can say yes to this? So I guess we feel like we're a secret NGO. I feel like we also, as the pro bono counsel, try to be educators within the firm. Very often people who are working in a certain office, maybe Brussels, Nina would know better, is a good example, where the people who work there probably weren't born there and just ended up working there. And so what we want to say to them is, you work here, you live here, look around you. What are the issues in Brussels? What are the social issues? What's the most pressing thing here? What's the poverty situation? Let's educate you about the social issues where you live and work now, and of course globally. And then once you're aware of them, hopefully lawyers have a heart, like bankers. And maybe the banker's heart rubs off on us a little bit. And you can say to people, did you see that homeless person this morning? Let's talk about why people are homeless in this particular city and how we can think about helping them. So yes, I feel like we do serve in that role within the firm. That would be my position.
Thanks, Saralyn. Of
Yeah.
course.
I am a little reluctant to say, maybe Saralyn will not be happy, but I'm a little reluctant to say that somebody who has the title pro bono coordinator is actually an entrepreneur. Maybe he has been so to become pro bono coordinator, but there are 4 characteristics of the entrepreneur. And the first characteristic is he doesn't have a mission, he gives himself a mission. He doesn't have time, he will take time to develop the mission. He doesn't have money, he will find money. And the last thing is he doesn't have support, he will find the support. So the job is done, and that's fantastic. I'm really amazed I was not aware, I must say, a few days ago, I was not aware that law firms has pro bono coordinators. It's fantastic. But the job is already done. The question is, how is it for law firms which do not have pro bono coordinators? There is probably a huge potential.
That's a really interesting point. And it's certainly something that we were discussing in the lead up to the panel. But I think probably all the pro bono coordinators in the room, do you feel like your job is done?
No.
Everything's fixed.
All you do is push the button and they just do what you say.
So I think in one sense, Emanuel, that there's truth, that there's now an institutionalized job, which is called pro bono coordinator, and now we're seeing some, not just in law firms, but also in banks or in other companies. Like BNP Paribas. We have Overy now, who is in a full-time role, which is fantastic. But I think, as Saralyn was commenting, there's a constant education process as well that needs to go on. But I think I'm interested to hear more from you, Emanuel, I think, about some of the institutional obstacles that people face in intrapreneurship. Because I think in discussing some of those, law firm coordinators will come across those not just in terms of having got the job, but in terms of every new project, potentially, that comes across their desks and getting support for those things. So perhaps we could have a look at some of that information.
Yeah.
Should I put the slide?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I will comment before the slide, but you can put already the slide. Well, I would summarize the three main obstacles. The three main obstacles for the entrepreneur. That's what I call the three I's: inertia, ignorance. Ignorance. I always forget. Sorry, I don't. And isolation. So I explain. Inertia first. The inertia of big companies. We have always done like that. Why should we change that? We don't have any budget. The top management will not agree, and so on. There will be always somebody who will say, why should we need to change? It's okay. Isolation. At the beginning, the innovator is very isolated. So that's why he needs to find friends, and I will explain later. And ignorance. When a topic is radically something new, something disruptive, like microfinance was at BNP Paribas 12 years ago. It was before Professor Yunus got the Nobel Peace Prize. So you need a lot of time, a lot of education of the people, so that the people within the company realize there is something to be done, there is an opportunity. So coming to my slide, you may know today it's a big day. You know what's happening today? It's the day of the issuance of the number 46 album of Asterix, La Transitanie. I'm not sure if it's translated. There are some supporters, I'm happy. So I'm not sure it's translated already into Hungarian or Russian or even English. I think they are trying to make a world launch, but it's a little complicated, especially there are a lot of jokes which are very, very difficult to translate. Seriously, we have here the case of an entrepreneur which is called Asterix. And we have taken the number 6 album, which is Asterix and Cleopatra. Asterix and Cleopatra. But you find the same schema in any album. And I could have taken Star Wars, for example. It's the same schema. And it's the same schema for the entrepreneur. If you look at the life of Steve Jobs, it's the same thing. There are 4 categories of people. Friends, good friends, enemies, and really very, very bad people. So let's start with the friends. I spoke about isolation, and the entrepreneur should never be alone. And there are 2 people which are very, very important for him. The first one is the mentor, panoramics. I don't remember how it is in English, sorry. And the boss. The mentor gives him some strength, some moral strength, and also the magic potion, but it's It's only a symbol. What is the most important is really the moral strength. And the boss gives him the resources, gives the authorization. Yes, it's a good idea. Yes, you may go. You may go with your friend numero 10, so with the architect in the story of Asterix and Cleopatra. You may go to support him. So that's the good friends, the leaders. And you have the followers. They are not the main characters, but they are very important. Of course, you have Obelix. Obelix is completely stupid, but without Obelix, you don't have Asterix. If you have Laurel and not Hardy, it doesn't work. So you need to have both. You have the other goals, of course. You have the scribe, the lawyer. Here, you have the captain of the boat, and you have the resources. Very important, the resources, the wild boar, so. And of course the dogmatics, I think it's called in English. So, and then you have the enemies. And the question is, who is the real enemy? Some people may say Caesar is the enemy of the Gauls. I'm not so sure. Actually, Caesar is in between, because he may sometimes tactically be friend of the Gauls and he will respect them and so on. But the two enemies are the, so first the Queen Cleopatra, very perverse enemy, and the architect of Cleopatra, who didn't get a job because it was numero 10 who got the job to build the palace of Cleopatra. Okay, we have also the pirate, but the pirate is not very important. So, and then we have the secondary characters, we have the Romans, we have the pirates, we have the spy, we have the scribe for the architect of Cleopatra. So, the story of, the idea besides the story is, if you are an entrepreneur, you must be able, within your environment, to identify who are your supporters and who are your best supporters. You must avoid your enemies. Don't talk to your enemies. They must not, especially if you are doing a secret job, they must not know that something is happening. Especially if they have the power to stop you, so you must avoid them. And it's very important to get support, to get the moral support, and to get the resources from the boss and from the mentor. I will answer questions if you have any.
Yeah, maybe, I think the micro is working. Maybe add to this wonderful imagery. I think that there is also external support for intrapreneurs, and there are intermediaries, organizations like Ashoka, other organizations that are out there and that are very important to also, mingle with and collaborate with and co-create maybe also your intrapreneurial journey with. Because many of the solutions for societal problems are out there already. It's not that you need to reinvent the wheel always, but the real lever lies in connecting with the ecosystem. And when I think about what you said, for example, in migration, there is a huge ecosystem of organizations that are working with migrants in refugee camps and so forth. So the lever that you can have as an entrepreneur through connecting with this ecosystem is much larger. And I think that is very important nowadays, to also work with the external supporters.
Yes, but here also I fully support you. The global ecosystem is very important. But there also, you have friends and enemies. You have people or organizations which are supposed to be supportive. And actually you are very disappointed. Because even if it's on their mission, they will not move. Because they are bureaucratic, because they didn't find the right person. At the same time, you will have good surprises, because you may have some small organizations which are very agile and which will really support you. So But the same schema may apply also to the external ecosystem.
That's a really interesting comment. And Saralyn, I'm wondering if you've got any particular tips for outside organisations that are looking to collaborate with law firms, in terms of, are there any particularities in how law firms operate that people should be aware of?
Right, well, and I would say, I hear what you're saying, Emanuel, about, oh, it looks like we're all good at the law firms. And having been doing this for a number of years, I was not the first pro bono, full-time pro bono person at my firm. And the terminology used is actually interesting as well, because initially we were all pro bono coordinators, and I would say we're somewhat tolerated within our firms, where the firm would say, oh, someone should be paying attention to this. This pro bono's happening, it could be a risk. We better figure out what the lawyers are doing and make sure they're not doing anything crazy. Isn't it nice that the young lawyers want to do this? I remember when I first came in, I said, well, you know, what are my goals? What do I need to be doing? And some of the partners said to me, oh, please don't let my phone ring anymore. Just let me forward the calls and the letters to you. Please talk to those young associates, those young idealists. We're very supportive of them doing this. Can you please make sure it's professional and we do it the best? So it wasn't a big goal of sustainable development goals. Let's think about a mission for the organization. And then over the years, as law firm pro bono professionals has grown, a coordinator now for many of us would be the most junior person on our team, and most of us are directors or counsel. So when you say pro bono coordinator to me, it's someone right out of university who has no experience. And so now it's become or maybe on step 2, but I would say within the firm, I think we still feel like entrepreneurs because we want to push it a bit. And I definitely see people within my company in all these categories. And one of the, going back to your point, one of the external supportive factors that I can use to push what we're doing is to look at our clients, our fee-generating clients, as I call them, and say, for example, one of them says, well, we have a foundation, and our corporation's focus for 2018 will be HIV/AIDS prevention in youth. And so then I can go to our leaders and say, well, this corporation, who's our big client, is really interested in HIV/AIDS prevention. So let's have them come over and present with me and talk to us about how we can work together with their entire team, not just the lawyers, to move that objective forward. So I think very often I do, and all of us, I think, interact with the fee-generating clients who are maybe much newer to a space, and maybe work with their entrepreneurs to say, come over, meet with me, let me get to know you, let me get to know your corporation, let us talk and develop a relationship and understand our strengths, what we can each offer. And I would like to hear more about where your offices are, what your business is, are you interested in the sustainable development goals, tell me what you're doing already, and then how can we work together. So that, I think, works for me for the fee-generating clients. And for the NGOs, I think what most of us say is, we want to hear from you. You can ask us to open a dialogue for whatever you need. And some NGOs will come and say, oh, Hayley, I see you're in Australia, we have this issue. And you might say, oh, well, we are not really working in this space, but David's firm is, so you can make the introduction. Or some of them will say, well, our offices, the woman from Mexico presenting showed a photo of her office destroyed. And so maybe the opening is, we have some extra office space in our Mexico office. Why don't you come and sit there for the moment, use our phones and copy machines, and when it's not so crazy, you and I can sit down and we can have a bigger plan about how we can help disaster victims going forward. So I think just to have an open door and be willing to listen to what people have to say and to learn about who they are and what they need and not really assume anything. That would be my thought on that.
Great. Okay, we had a great session that some of you may have attended yesterday, which was talking about failure. And I think in a lot of the literature around entrepreneurship, or any business really, failure is a huge part of it. So I was wondering if any of the panelists wanted to share any failures that they've been involved in and what they've learned from that.
When I mentioned that we have launched the microfinance initiative and then later the social business initiative, actually before getting the approval for the social business initiative, it took me 3 years to get the approval. Why? Question of timing. We launched the the microfinance initiative in 2007, and then for me it was obvious that there was something to be done which was greater in the social business field. And in 2009, I've been launching, I've been writing partly because of Ashoka, because it was the 30th anniversary of Ashoka at that time. I was very impressed to see several big companies which had the same idea as we had to work with social businesses like Danone you mentioned, or GDF Suez or whatever. And then I came to the idea we have to do something. I didn't realize it was not the good timing because of the financial crisis. And I remember the number 2 of the bank saying to me, "But Emanuel, you don't realize it's not the right time. It's not possible. It's not the right time." 2 years later, I relaunched the idea, and I went on holiday. So it was in June. I went on holiday. Never take holidays when you are a social entrepreneur. I went on holiday after launching a proposal to the top management, and again it was the second part of the financial crisis in August. It was the crisis of the sovereign debt. So I didn't need to have anybody to tell me it's not the right time. 1 year later, in 2012, I said, okay, really, we have to try harder. And I spoke to the former chairman of the bank, Michel Tegro, so very respected banker. And he told me it's a good idea. You should meet the new number 2 of the bank, François Villeroy. And at that time, François Villeroy was very already instrumental and very supportive of microfinance. He knew quite well about that. And he actually decided to launch this initiative about social business. So it shows the importance of right timing for launching an initiative.
Well, I mean, for us, I think failure is actually part of our core business, yeah? Because for each of the fellows that we support, they want to change systems. So that's one of the features of an Ashoka fellow, is that his solution is system changing. And that really means that they, are blocked everywhere, that they hear no's nearly every day sometimes, that the legal framework is not favorable for their solutions, and so forth. So we've really developed a support structure around that. But it's not only about supporting the fellow. I think it's also something that is very personal feature of the social entrepreneur or social entrepreneur. Yeah. Normally, and what we're looking for is people who are very creative, yeah, and who can find their ways around the system barriers. And but still, failure is always possible. And what you then need to do is what Emanuel said: is just stay in the field and don't give up. Yeah. Because once you are convinced and once you have a mission, yeah. And you know that what the solution that you are actually want to bring into this world is the right one, then the only way is not to give up and find support, but still lead the way.
But I would say at the same time, what is very important is what's called innovation, the capacity to pivot. So you have an idea, an initial idea, maybe it's not the perfect idea. And you must listen to the environment, because the right idea, you will find it. Because people of your environment will tell you, to give you an example, at the beginning of the story of microfinance, thought we should launch a microfinance organization ourselves. It took me only a few months to realize it's not a good idea, because it would mean a lot of human resources and financial resources to do that. Whereas we have more impact if we finance the microfinance organization than launching a competitor to them. So we had to pivot. There is well, some of you, since you are lawyers, you have been studying Latin, of course. So there is a saying in Latin which says, errare humanum est, perseverare diabolicum. So it's human to fail, but it's
Not acceptable.
What is it? Diabolic. So it's
Diabolic.
It's diabolic to
give up.
To continue. So sometimes you must think, okay, at this time, it's perseverare, it's to continue. Okay. So sometimes it's not the right timing, or you need just to adjust something else. So listen to your environment.
Well, I think just a very local example I think of is very often in different cities, the law firm pro bono professionals will get together with the local NGOs and look for areas of need that might be emerging or might have been there all along and haven't been addressed. So in New York City, there was an issue with low-income individuals being able to access a certain public benefit. And they would not have guidance in submitting the application, and then they would get called for this hearing, and they would basically say, you're hearing this tomorrow, and we don't accept children in the court, so good luck with that. So we said, well, maybe we should have lawyers who could be on staff and ready to go down and help them. So we had training, the NGOs trained all of us, and we had volunteers ready. But it never really worked because there wasn't enough notice. So the man would get his notice noon on Thursday, you have to be here tomorrow morning. We would try to be very agile and get a lawyer down there, and then the man wouldn't be able to come, and the court would have to change it, and the opportunity was lost. So we said, let's all come back together and think about this, and what we should do is that there should be law students trained who could sit in that location every day and just be ready for whoever came in and do a first level of, I think, Paulina, was it the Mackenzie friend? I shouldn't use that term not knowing it well, but to not really be your full-on lawyer, but to be able to guide you a little bit. And then on the other hand, maybe have the law firms contribute money to hire a fellow, a lawyer who could work for the NGO, who would only work with those law students and be at a desk ready to pick up the phone from the law student saying, my gosh, I'm not really aware of this issue. And so it wasn't really going to work for our law firms to send people down to this location, but we didn't give up. And we said, as a law firm pro bono project, this is a failure, but let's try to address the situation anyway so that these folks can have access to justice with us donating money and working with the law schools and just trying to be creative and not saying, let's just leave it. We don't ever like to just completely stir up the pot and then say, oh, sorry, we can't really help, and then walk away. So I think you do have to pivot. I think it's a good word to use.
Great, thank you all. And now
I'd like to ask everyone in the audience if anybody's got any questions. We might take 2 questions and then allow the panelists to respond. So I think, was there one question here? Yeah, I think there's a microphone coming across.
In fact, I could have many questions. So just, I'm Jean-Luc Bedos. I created Droit d'Urgence more than 20 years ago in France, which is basically, we have been doing what you have tried to do in New York, we have done it in Paris. And at the meantime, just because I have to gain my life, I am an M&A partner with Dentons. Basically, 25 years ago when I created Droit d'Urgence, I created as an NGO with volunteers. Now I think that they have 70 employees, 400 or 500 volunteers, working most of the time on pro bono basis. But my question and my concern is really what is the next step? Because basically, if instead, and I felt as being an entrepreneur, as Emanuel said 25 years ago, but if I still react as an entrepreneur now, I will not create an NGO. I would create a legal firm, law firm, which will work half of the time for free and half of the time for getting fees and to be in a position to pay remuneration of lawyers. Because at the moment we are stuck with 60, 70 employees, but frankly we could hire 200, 300 lawyers just tomorrow, except that we don't have the money to do it. And it's not, I don't think that it's a job of the law firms to provide the resources, not only on lawyers, but on monies. The state is in failure, complete failure, and stop providing money for such type of work. So there is, what will be the next step? Because being an entrepreneur is good, but I mean, you need to get resources, and not only your the little thing there, and just to pay people. And we know that when we go on the streets as a lawyer, we don't need only lawyers. We need social workers, and we need people to organize logistics. My understanding is that when you have 4 different places in a city where you will send every day 2 or 3 lawyers, you will need 1 extra person which will just work on logistics.
Okay.
So
it
Thank
confirms what I am saying. Definitely you are an entrepreneur because you have the capacity to change the business model, to imagine a new business model. That's disruptive. So to create something new from something old.
I need people like you just obliging me to think what will be the next step.
And actually, there is a great example from Australia of a firm that is set up on that basis, Salvo's Legal, which does commercial work but also has a very, very strong practice for assisting low-income individuals, which has been set up in pretty much the way you've described. So there are examples out there. I'm not sure if there are similar examples from the US.
I'm not as
Let's set
familiar
one
with
up.
that model, right? But I hear what you're saying, because I think many of us in law firms get to points where we feel stuck too, where we have a practice of going on, but then we want to take it to the next level, and that's where I think we all try to get creative and think we want to do more. We don't want to. One of the sessions we talked about where a bunch of us were in a room. I don't know if it was you, David, who was saying this, and we found out that 4 firms were doing the same research for 4 different NGOs. That's not useful. Like, one of us could continue and the other should move on and encourage the NGOs to share the research. And so you see waste and duplication, and there's so much work to be done that it's unfortunate that that happens. So it's true, like within the definition, we're, the hardest thing about entrepreneur for me is spelling. And I always spell that wrong, but I'm not exactly sure where we are technically and which place, but I think we feel like there's lots to be done, and lots of us feel very stuck, and we're proud of what we've done, but we'd like to do more and maybe break out of some of the models that we have to be even more effective. So I completely understand how you feel about that.
Yeah, and I think it's by coming to places like PILnet's forum where we can hear some inspiration and some great ideas that we can keep going with our work. Okay, I think there's a couple more questions, so we'll take a couple. Yeah, we'll take 3 questions and then we'll come back for some responses. Thanks.
Thank you. Very illuminating panel. I wanted to address this to the whole panel, actually, that one of the, looking back at your slide there, you were talking about your enemies and how at all costs you should just avoid them. And as entrepreneurs, and I do think as NGO, as pro bono council and team managers, we are entrepreneurs within our firms. If I was to avoid every enemy I imagine, I'm not going to call them enemies, but certainly obstacles to what I'm trying to do, I may as well have them going tomorrow, actually. And I wondered what approach you've taken, actually. Has it just been to simply avoid anybody that didn't agree with you, or whether you found techniques and mechanisms to work around and reach the point you want to get to.
Okay, just here at the front.
Yeah, this is just a fantastic and thought-provoking panel. So I think about Sean Parker's words, social disruption, and his vision for recreating so many different industries in the world. And when I think about our work as leaders of the pro bono field, I think we're also social disruptors in some sense within our own organizations. Now we're facing, particularly in the United States and some parts of Europe, a situation where we've had a total regression of some of the progress we've made in civil rights and human rights and other areas. And one thing I think about now is now the right time to continue to push forward on social disruption, or is it the time to hunker down and really try and protect the rights that we've gained for the last 50 years?
I think there was one up the back. Raise your hand. No? Okay, we'll start with those two questions.
Yeah. To the first question, there is no magic potion. So panoramics is preparing, as you know, the magic potion. But in real life, there is no magic potion. Or you have the magic potion in yourself, which is your intuition. Your intuition to find the right way in the ecosystem of the company and the external ecosystem, to find the people who will really support you, and to find the people who may be your enemies, whereas at the beginning they may be the supporters. In my book, to give an example, I had, well, I cannot quote the people by name, but I had, I would say 10 out of the 20 cases, but the people told me I had a disruptive idea for the company which would concern CSR. I talked to the CSR guy, and the CSR guy said, no, it's not possible, we don't have any budget, it will not work like that, the top management will not support, and so on and so on. So those people are the enemies, whereas you expect them to be your supporter. So, but you know that only if you talk to them. So that's why actually the entrepreneur is first a salesperson. He's selling ideas. Like a lawyer, he's selling ideas, and that's much more difficult to sell ideas than to sell concrete products. And that's why it's important to identify those competitors, so to say. There will be always people who say, what are you doing there? That's my job. So he will not do that. But actually, it's on his territory, so he's defending the territory. And at the same time, you may have good surprises of people. To give another concrete example, so microfinance at BNP Paribas was initially lodged within the private banking department, means the wealthy people. Why? Because the head of private banking department was fully convinced for himself, for the customers, for the bank, that it was something to do. It was not pure rationally, because it would have been much better in retail banking, but he was convinced. He has been a strong supporter, even if it's more or less products. So the question is to identify those people, and that's why maybe 40 or 100 contacts are necessary. There is a Chinese saying which says 100 battles, 100 victories. No, know yourself, know your enemy. 100 battles, 100 victories. So, you say, you know that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, if you are able to have 100 battles, then you will have 100 victories. But first, you need to know your enemies and to know your friends, your genuine friends.
Great. Would you like to respond in terms of, is it time to hunker down, or should we continue to be disruptive? Or is there really a disruption? Is it disruptive, perhaps, to maintain protection of human rights?
Right. Well, and I've known Jane and loved working with her for so many years, and I think we all have such a similar feeling. And I think, I guess if I do try to see a silver lining, at least in the US, is that looking at some of the core work, and Jane is a champion for many years of refugees. a lot of the law firms have always had solid programs assisting refugees, and maybe the silver lining of our current administration is that people who I thought were, I don't know, I feel like I love that chart. I really want that chart. And I think that I have those people, but then I have maybe 400 who are just sitting at their desk like, I just need to do my work and go home, and I'm not going to take a stand. I'm not going to be your friend. I'm not going to be your foe. And I feel like the beauty of the current situation is that a lot of them have come to me and said, oh, I know we always do the asylum and help refugees, and now I'm ready to help. And that's been great. And so I feel like the troops are renewed a little bit with people that I didn't expect. And so I think that's been very positive. But perhaps maybe our firm was the firm that took the first cases, along with the Center for Constitutional Rights for Guantanamo. Oh my gosh, it was craziness. People were calling me in, the head of the firm was like, how could we do this? And then it became kind of regular practice that all the firms would represent Guantanamo detainees, but we kind of had a firestorm in the beginning. Would I do that again now? I think I'd have to think very carefully about whether we could win or succeed with a brand new firebrand idea. And I think that we definitely want to focus on bolstering what we're doing already and spreading the word within the firm. But I think it's absolutely such an important question for us. But I feel like we can't stay silent either. It's such a challenge for all of us, but we have to keep doing what we're doing for sure and raise it a bit. But whether it's time to, go rogue, it's hard to know. And I think even when a bunch of us were in Asia last week and talking about our Asia offices, and one thing for our offices in China that they always tell me is, we love pro bono, but please, let's not do anything that will get us kicked out of China. And I don't want to get kicked out of China because of pro bono as a firm. So, and that's always been in my head. Okay, what can we do in China without getting kicked out of China as a law firm? So you're always weighing those things. It's challenging.
For me, both questions are very much also connected to the ecosystem work that we do at Ashoka. And the way we're thinking of it is we use network analysis as a tool to identify change makers in a certain field. And the way it works is very, very intuitive. You name 30 persons that you feel are allies in your field, and then these name another 30 persons, and then at the end of it you have a whole map where you see who are the important change makers in a field, in the social field in general, in social entrepreneurship. It can be in migration or in you name it. And when you look at this map and you see who are the important players and what do I want to achieve, you start working with them and see what it would need to develop this market. And there is an African proverb that says it takes a whole village to raise a child, and we say it takes a whole city to raise a social entrepreneur. So you need everything. You need the logistics, you need the law support, you need maybe recreation areas for the people who are involved. So you really build up a whole ecosystem of support for whatever problem, social issue or problem you want to solve. And we do that in countries, and we see that it works very well. But we really need to break down the walls between the areas, the fields, between the private and the public sector, between the lawyers and the people working in corporates. And I think that is one of the most important things that we have ahead if we really want to change whatever we want to change. So.
Great.
Thank you for inviting me here as well. I feel a little bit, I'm coming from the outside, but I feel it's for me, it's very important, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to close our session. We've run out of time, but I think your comments around the need for us to work together and to think differently, I think we can all go forward with that idea and think about how we can implement that within our own businesses or NGOs. Now, we do have, some of you will have in your chairs or near you a postcard, and I thought it might be a good opportunity now, we're near the end of the conference. One of the ways to maintain your inspiration and to continue to not give up in some great work that you're all doing is to have a think about some of the great ideas or projects that you've heard about at the conference over the past couple of days. Write one of them down on the postcard, put on your name and address, and there's going to be a box just over by the edge of the stage there where we'll collect them, and in 2 months' time we'll send them back to you. So in 2 months' time, when you're back at your desks and you're feeling like, oh God, it's Monday again, why am I here? You might get a little postcard that reminds you not to give up, to think about a new idea, to think about back to your happy memories, dancing to the Roma band at PILnet, and to make some change in your organisation. So do fill these out before you go, drop them in the box, but also I'd like you to thank so much our wonderful panel.